G'day and welcome to the Game Day Squad NRL Fantasy Show. I'm Stu, that's Dill, and we are the Fantasy Bros. We're back once again, partnering with Game Day Squad to bring you all you need to know to succeed in GDS Rugby League this season. Dill, it's Wednesday again. You know what that means. TLT has already dropped, and it's time to take a deep dive into our Round 11 GDS squads. Before we get there, though, how did your teams go in Round 10? And more importantly, the GDS Cup?
Yep. G'day, mate. G'day, viewers and listeners. Look, before we get into that, round 11 is here. It feels like the season is just cranking along so quick. Before we know it, we'll be heading into finals. Obviously, we've got the origin period coming up soon to deal with. But yeah, in terms of round 10, look, I had no top 20 finishes with a couple of probably poor selections. Obviously, the Knights threw up a bit of nothing. And the Broncos had a bit of a poor performance as well, where we loaded up quite a few players from those two games. But as always, my focus continues on the inaugural GDS Cup. I did win my quarterfinal, fortunately, so that means I am now through to the final four. And Brian's Broncos, if you are out there, I am ready and pumped for this weekend.
How good. Congrats, mate. Down to the final four, flying the flag still for the Fantasy Bros. I lay part claim to that, I think, if you have some even greater success into that grand final next week. So I'm happy to be there right alongside you, even though my name's not there on the team sheet. I want to share in that glory any way I can. We've got Sif Kanga in the house, like always. Howdy. Let's get rowdy. G'day, Sif Kanga. Thanks for joining us. Anyone else, make sure you say g'day. You let us know who you're starting in your GDS squads this week. And if you've got any potential pods for this week as well, we want to know who you're thinking. Some other people might not play. Look, Dill, into the final four for the GDS Cup is fantastic. Well done, mate. The four is a bit of a theme for the both of us, it seems. I came back-to-back fourth again in the Challenger competition, and I'm sitting fourth overall. So there's lots of fours. Maybe that number will be 2 next week when you're into the final 2. And that might mean that I find myself second on the podium. So Challenger's going along nicely. Starter and Challenger, throwing a few curveballs into those sorts of comps. Not really paying off. Champion's going along okay. But still in prize card territory, which is what we want.
That's it. And as we always say, the GDS Cup, the winner of that, one of the 4 that are standing, will receive the 33rd pick. And I hear there's a little bit of a hint or a tease out on Discord at the moment from GameDay Cal around the next head-to-head competition and the mystery 32nd pick in the prize card draft. And there'll be some more information about that soon. So keep your eyes out on Discord. Look, obviously, we're still continuing to have a bit of success across a range of competitions. So make sure that you're tuning in each and every week to hear Stu and I talk about our teams and who we are looking to start and sit. We'll be coming to you every Wednesday night. So we're back to the usual schedule. Make sure you subscribe to the Fantasy Bros YouTube channel because you don't want to miss any of the updates that we bring you. Also, if you haven't already, make sure you jump across to our other socials. We have now started to post our pods of the week, and we will continue to do that each and every week. And look, just quietly, we have had some success with those pods. They have been absolutely killing it each and every week. So you don't want to miss that. So head on over to TikTok or Instagram and follow us at FantasyBrosAU so that you can keep up with our pods of the week.
It's also definitely not too late to get started in Game Day Squad at Rugby League either. You might not be in the running for the GDS Cup, but there is that little teaser that Dill mentioned earlier. You can still certainly win plenty of fantastic cash and pack prizes each and every week simply by logging in using the code FBRL25 for three free 9-player common packs. There you go.
Say that again.
I'll try that one again. 3 free 9-player common packs. There you go. Just for signing up. That's 27 cards that you can start putting into your classic and challenger competitions alongside all the bronzes that you can get for free to start filling out that challenger squad. So don't think just because it's round 11 you can't get involved. If you've got a few mates that you watch the footy with every weekend or chat footy with, maybe you play a different fantasy game with them, get them involved into in Game Day Squad as well. They can use that code on screen. They can use our referral codes that you can see on screen as well. If you get your mate involved, send them your referral code too. You can both benefit from doing so. So FBRL25 is that code upon sign up. Let us know in the Discord or via Instagram what you get in any of those packs that you do decide to open. Dill, let's get into today's show. What's the plan again?
Definitely. So we always go through our Wednesday night shows. We preview who we think the best players are going to be for the round. Obviously, with a big bye, big team on the bye, and a few injuries, that's becoming a little bit more difficult, particularly for this round and future rounds when we have those the big bye periods as well. We'll reveal who are playing in our All Bronze starter squads as we continue, or one of us continues working towards that GDS Cup. And we'll also talk a little bit about who we might be hedging our bets on, or who we might pivot to in some of the other squads as well. And as always, at the end of the show, we will jump through our Bro Down Showdown segment where the viewers can win potentially some unreal cards. We gave away some awesome cards last week. I think we gave Sif Kanga he chose the Diamond CNK, and that would have paid off big time. He was the top scorer in that Warriors game there. So hopefully Sif was able to play him. And then, as always, we do talk through the GDS Cup, and we have the massive semi-final. Big Horse up against Fire Breathers. That should be an unreal matchup there. Two big powerhouses. And then myself up against Brian's Broncos, who I believe had a selection in the prize card draw last year. So I think he knows a little bit about the game, and hopefully it should be a good matchup there as well. So plenty to play for this weekend. Reminder for all of those four, you don't need to do anything. Just set your lineups as you normally would for your starter squad, and the GDS boys will do the rest. And as always, the last coach standing will win that 33rd pick in the prize card draft, which I'm fingers crossed I'm going to get that. Anyway, let's move on. And as always, we start going through positions. So let's start at hooker. Pretty boring position, but we've got some potential pods maybe coming through. Who are you looking at playing this week, and some reasons why?
Yeah, got a few good options there on screen, but for me, it probably just comes down to Reece Robson and Blake Brayley. Once again, we sort of know what we're going to get from them, particularly really Blake Brayley, who's, getting through his 50 tackles just about every game. Not many demerits, and he's finding that try assist, every now and then as well. So if you can bank that 50 to 55 from your hooker and move on to your other positions, then that's a great play. We've tried to go a little bit rogue in the past with a Cook, a JMK, Harry Grant early on, and the mid 30s that they can dish out. These blokes, aren't great for your hooker score when you just lock in a safe sort of 50 to 55. And Brayley's been doing that a lot recently. I think you're pretty keen on him. I'm going to go back to Reece Robson here. He's not as consistent as Brayley, but he has shown a bigger ceiling. He sort of got his running game back into gear probably 3 or 4 matches ago, and it was sort of like he maybe had some information in his ear about, look, mate, you need to start doing a little bit more than just tackling and passing from the deck if you want to wear that sky blue number 9 jersey again. And so he sort of started running the footy a bit more. He scored a try. He had a big 70-plus point game, but then he's sort of gone back to his mid-40s once or twice. So, look, he's got the ceiling. He's got a bit of upside. We've seen it. His floor's not too much lower than Blake Brayley. So I'm happy to bank that sort of mid to high 40 and hope he can jag an attacking stat or two. But look, like you said, the hooker position's not exciting. Although there is one man there that's not named in the number 9 jersey yet. He could be eventually. Is there any temptation to start him, mate?
Yeah, there is. Yeah, the man you're talking about, Harry Grant, obviously has been named on the extended bench. And there is a lot of temptation. At the moment, as you said, I am playing Blake Brayley. And like you said, it's just a pretty boring position, a set and forget almost. Most decent options are hovering around that 45 to 60. And then we've got a couple of, bolters every week that probably are a different player that sort of get around that 70. And so it's not too much variance between the safe Blake Brayley or Robson and one of those bolters. I think Tyron Wishart last week, obviously in that big blow-up match, had a decent 70, but it's so hard to pick them. But yeah, that man, Harry Grant, he's on the extended bench. It'll be a watch for me and just see if he does come in, where he does, whether he's off the bench, whether he's starting, and then where that man Wishart does end up. Sorry, Garlick was the player that I was referring to, not Wishart. I apologise. Where Garlick ends up on that bench as well. So it'll just be a bit of a watch. But I guess the good thing is that the Sharks are playing the Storm, so I'll have a pretty good idea which way I'll be leaning an hour before kickoff, or even 24 hours before kickoff when they cut their squads down a little bit as well. We'll probably have a better idea. So yeah, Harry Grant, definitely a watch. And I think he could be a good play this week if he does come in and we know that he's going to play those 80 minutes. But at the moment, not sure. So I'm just going to stick with the safety and Blake Brayley. And as you said, pick that position, move on and play some risk up, in some other positions. Before we move on, though, it looks like Jay Boney is back again, which is awesome to see. Welcome back, mate. Is Riley Smith a pod? He's currently playing 80 minutes or close to 80 minutes for the Eels. Is that someone that you potentially look at because he's got that, that 80-minute option in him?
G'day, Jay Boney. Thanks for joining in once again, mate. Dill, I'm just looking through the stats center. Riley Smith hasn't really come to mind as a playable option, and maybe with good reason. I don't think he's a playable player in game day squad at the moment. I might be wrong, but I can't find his name listed in the stats center. Can't find any cards that I'm able to play for him as well. So, I mean, to the definition of the word pod, he would absolutely be a massive point of difference if you had his card and you wanted to play him in game day squad. But maybe more on your different fantasy platforms where you've got a bit of a salary cap and that sort of thing. He might be decent getting those 80 minutes and a soft match up there against the Knights. But look, Jay Boney, not in game day squad when you've got the likes of, Brayley, Robson, Egan, Tommy Starling, all punching out some pretty big numbers in some pretty good attacking teams as well. So, yeah, not Riley Smith for me, but Sif Kanga has got a pretty good option there in Tommy Starling. We've said it countless times, mate. We'd love for him to be playing 80 minutes. There just seems to be that, that psychological block on someone not getting 80 minutes at hooker that almost makes us want to bypass him. But the numbers speak for themselves. He's averaging, really, really well for not even playing 80 minutes. I'll just get those numbers up. Look, he's averaging the fourth most across all hookers, even though he's averaging less minutes than a number of the players that he's outscoring as well. So not a bad option there. The Raiders have a nice matchup against the Titans. We're going to be talking about plenty of Raiders players during the show tonight, Sif Kanga. So if you're going to roll out Starling, good on you. And yeah, that's a great pod. Well done.
Yeah, and just on Riley Smith quickly, as you said, he's not available at the moment in Game Day Squad. His scores do come up if you go to the individual matches. So if you want to keep an eye on Riley Smith and his progress for when he is added to the game. Last week, for example, Riley Smith, 48 GDS points. From that, it was 58 tackles, which is obviously massive. The concern there is the 5 missed tackles on top of that, and then the 8 meters that he ran. So, it's a real positive in the number of tackles, but some of the other stats there are pretty damning as well. 48 points, not bad, but yeah, wait and see and keep an eye on him because, I think he could be one for the future for sure. He's just not available yet.
Right, I certainly didn't have Riley Smith on the bingo card for tonight's discussion.
Not at all.
But I'm sure everyone has Payne Haas and Terrell May on their bingo card. Are they absolute locks every single time they're named on the team sheet? Do we need to talk about them much?
Yeah, no, not at all. And look, I was going to say each week we come in by saying we're going to play the big three of Haas, May and Yo. Obviously, there's that big looming thing down in the corner there everyone can see on screen with the Panthers on the bye. So we're going to have to look somewhere else outside of the big three. But in terms of this week, they're the big two. I don't think we need to talk about them at all. They are just set and forgets for me. It'll come down to, where our other third, fourth, and potential fifth middle, depending on your strategy, might be. We've sort of probably got one that we both agree on at the moment, and that's Joe Tarpany. I think he's considered probably one of the safer plays out of those remaining players that are up on the screen. With the likes of Aaron Clark, AFB, and even Carrigan potentially that I played last week had a good week. But, I think Joe Tarpany is probably the safer play. He continues to be that super consistent player with those mid-50s to mid-60s sort of scores since the start of the season. He's had 2 low games of 30, but it's not surprising. Those 2 low games was where he had reduced minutes. So if we can keep his minutes, or we see his minutes around that 55 to 60 mark, which is more in line with the last few weeks, I think we'll be pretty happy. And as a result, his last 3 games, his average has been 62 GDS points. So I think it's a pretty easy play from me. Are you sort of thinking the same thing?
Yeah, we got Hosking out of the middle rotation now. Obviously, Matty Nicholson has gone down injured, so Hosking just moved straight back into that edge position, which means that there should be a few more minutes freed up through the middle there. Hosking was obviously playing some really good footy, and Sticky could leave him out there a little bit longer and maybe give Tapane a bit more of a rest if he wanted, but we still saw some 60-minute matches across the past 2 matches. Now, Hosking's not in there taking up any of the, all the tackles and the run meters, so this is the sort of occasion where Joe Tapane really shines. And over the next probably 2 or so months, he's probably going to feature on our show a lot more because of his, he won't be playing Origin. He's not eligible to play Origin. We're going to be talking about the restings of Haas and May, Yo, all those sorts of players. So Tapane is going to be that mainstay, I think. He has had those 2 low scores of 33, which do coincide with lower minutes. But yeah, been super consistent, pumping out a number of, 60-point scores. And he's certainly shown in the past he can score tries, he can break tackles, he can offload. So, yeah, really liking seeing his name in my squad, but also that matchup against the soft Titans pack. We know that they're hurting a little bit. They're leaking 30 points per match in every single NRL game that they're playing. Not to, they're not due to a lack of trying, but they're just, not so good across the park. And I really like Joe Tapine as a play. But in that same match, I'm actually leaning to Big Tino. Now, he's not on screen there as one of our 6 options. I know you're pretty keen on one or two others ahead of him, but for me, Tino, does come up against that Raiders pack, who are notorious for bullying opposition forward packs. But we've seen Tino being an absolute workhorse his whole career, but just in the past few weeks, you can see that he's really tried to up his game in terms of putting in for his club. His club's struggling, his coach, is struggling as well. So we've seen him offload 7 times in the last 2 matches. In the 4 matches prior to that, he'd only offloaded 7 times in total. So that's obviously a clear thing that he's trying to do to improve not only his game, but the players around him. And if he's looking to promote the ball whenever he's going into contact, that's just going to come with points as well. Not just with the offload, but blokes like Campbell who can slice through a gap off the back of that offload is looking really tempting for me. We've said it a few times. It's the demerits, the missed tackles, a couple of penalties, those sorts of things. They will happen with Tino's game, so you have to be aware of that if you're going to play him into your side. But I like the work. I like how he's just absolutely putting in, playing huge minutes for his club. He's got the attacking upside. He's promoting the footy a lot more. So I think there's a few big ticks around Tino for this week, and I'm happy to roll them out.
Yeah, just on the demerits, if you go over to the Stat Center over on the GDS website, you filter by mid forwards, and then you look over across at the missed tackles, and you click the missed tackles so that sorts by the top player with missed tackles. We've got Tom Gilbert at the top with 37 missed tackles, and then 2 names down is Tino Fasuamal-Awi on 33 missed tackles. That is a bit of a concern, and that's probably why I just have him rated slightly below some of the other names on that screen there. One of those names is Aaron Clark, and Sif Kang is talking about Aaron Clark as well here. He's going to play May, Haas, Tarpany, and then not sure on Clark with the big fish back, and that's the big watch for me is James Fisher-Harris back in the side, and that kind of coincides with Aaron Clark's performances. If we look at his 4-game average across the last 4 weeks, it's up at 63 GDS points from Aaron Clark, which is unreal considering he's playing around an average of 60 minutes. So he's getting just above a point per minute, which is awesome. Which again, then we compare that to the first 5 games that he played where Fisher-Harris was in the side, and Aaron Clark's average drops to 43, as does his minutes. It was just a touch over 40. So still that point per minute, which is great to see, but it's the minutes that I'm concerned about and the scoring output as a result. So yeah, I'm a little bit of a watch and wait and see what the rest of that bench is made up of and what that looks like in terms of Sam Healy, etc. on the bench there, and what the minutes are going to be like for Fisher-Harris and Clark. Clark's obviously playing some unreal footy, and he's doing a really good job for the Warriors, and as a result, the Warriors are winning games. But yeah, Fisher-Harris back, it's just a big concern. Is that something that you're gonna risk, or you're gonna sort of fade and wait and see?
No, I always put a team together Monday morning after lockout, particularly if my team hasn't done well. I'll press the clear button and start fresh. Aaron Clark was definitely in my side on Monday before that team list came out on Tuesday. Even though that bench looks amazing with TMM and Sam Healy on it, I think if they run out like that, I think Clark, will be straight into my side. It sort of locks him in for some big minutes. But they've got Roger Tuivasa-Sheck hanging out there in the reserves. There's every chance he comes in the center. Capel pushes to the edge. Niokore into the middle from the bench, and Healy dropping out as well. So there would be that middle coming back into the rotation. So that would probably put a line through Clark with JFH. We know his numbers with and without him. Albeit Clark looks like a bit of a different player in the last probably 4 or 6 weeks. But happy to sit back and watch for a week to see how that rotation between the two works out, and if he's still getting his big minutes and getting through his work, or if he takes a bit of a back seat with the big leader alongside him there. So with Tapine, with Tino, a few other good blokes that we can put in there alongside him that probably won't do too much worse, if at all. Clark's a bit of a watch with the big asterisks if they for some reason run out with TMM and Sam Healy. I expect plenty of late changes to teams with Aaron Clark.
Yeah, and that probably is the watch probably more so is then on that man that you talked about as well in RTS. His second week in a row he's been named on the extended bench.
Yeah.
I did hear some news last week that he was posting some photos from his own house 2 days before the match. So it was assumed that he was not going to make the squad over at the Dragons for that game there. So yeah, again, it might be a bit of a watch on his Instagram to see whether he's posting any more photos and whether they're in Brisbane or not, because that's obviously a big matchup and he will be a big in for the side. Just on the middle forward and that rotation, Lockie Armstrong, g'day, mate. Thanks for commenting. He's asked, would we consider Fisher Harris? It probably not someone that I think about or go to when I see his name there. Before the injury, before that round 6 injury, where he played 11 minutes, he was averaging 50 minutes per game, and he was only averaging just below 50 points. So again, it's probably a consistency thing, and it's probably just that opportunity for some of the other players who have more attacking upside potentially. We've seen Joe Tarpany go over for a try. The other bloke that I'm looking at playing in Max King, he's now gone over for 2 tries, and even Aden Fanua-Blake, we know what kind of game that he plays, even though he's around that 50 minutes as well. It's not a bad option in terms of just below a point per minute, but I'd probably be looking for just a little bit of upside if I wanted to play a 4th or 5th middle. Is that something you probably agree with or disagree?
He almost screams sort of Jake Trbojevic, New South Wales Blues. Probably great for the locker room, great for the young boys around him, but probably the big fantasy numbers are maybe a little bit behind him at this stage. So he probably lifts the boys, and that's a great thing for the club. But yeah, probably not someone I'm rushing out to start unless there's a change in the way that he's approaching his footy, and he's getting amongst the tackle breaks, the offloads, that sort of thing. But yeah, plenty of watch on the Knights on the Warriors pack, mate. You've got Maxi King. Yeah. I'll give you 30 seconds to talk about him. But what I do like, the news that I have heard about Max King is that I'm pretty sure you might be able to back me up here, but the same amount of tries as Kalen Ponga in the last 13 months. Which is simply incredible. So you're getting a try-scoring freak like Kalen Ponga in your middle forwards. Why are we not all flocking to Max King? Yeah. Now, in all seriousness, he has scored a couple. He has looked really good. Why are you looking at him over a couple of other options this week?
Yeah, and I think it's the consistency that, we've talked about the last few weeks with Maxi. He's averaging about 50 minutes per game, but we've seen him push to that 60. And that's where I sort of like my middles to be around that 60-minute mark. And obviously there's been a few things and a few changes happening at the Bulldogs, and they're starting to get back to full strength, albeit without Jacob Preston at the moment. But I love his work rate, and I love that potential attacking opportunity. Last week against a really strong Raiders side, they took control of that game early, the Raiders, and then the Doggies fought back pretty hard. Max King made 40 tackles and ran over 100 metres. So just right there's 50 points in base alone. So, outside of that, where he did score a try, have a line break and a tackle break as well, he's still racking up that 50 points in base, whereas Fisher Harris and others might be needing to do a little bit more to get to that 50-point base average. So I really like Max King for that. And like you said, he's got 2 tries in him now. He's probably hungry for some more. And I wouldn't mind seeing him, get down and dirty up against a pretty good Roosters side, where I think there'll be a pretty big forward battle with Spencer Leniu. I think Lindsay Collins might be back as well. So there's a bit of firepower up front there for the Roosters. So it'll be an interesting battle that Maxi King will face. And I think I really like that for Max. We've obviously seen his ability to make tackles and have some attacking opportunities. So yeah, roll out all hail the King, I think I'm going to be saying again this week.
There you go. All hail the King. That should be a cracker Friday night, shouldn't it? Dogs, yes. Roosters. Mate, this week with Isaiah Yeo out of the middle, it probably allows us to look for a few extra edge options if we want to run 2 on the bench. I know you and I are both pretty keen on at least 1. Look, Hutto Young and Dill Lucas have just been outstanding, and they're almost the equivalent of Payne Haas and Terrell May for the edge position, really, where if they're named on the team sheet, you're just running them out. Look, their average is already about 8 or 9 points higher than the third best average. But Lucas has averaged 62.3. Young's averaged 62.2. But Lucas has scored 6 less tries than Hudson Young. That's incredible to think about how good Dylan Lucas's season has been when, all the rage is about Hutto Young and how good he's been. They're averaging the exact same, but with 6 extra tries for Young. And just to compare it, we've got Bo Firma on 55, last year's guns, Haumole and Eli Katoa, we were always trying to fit them into our squads. They're both averaging just shy of 50. We got Young and Lucas at 62.3. So, yeah, they're absolute plugs for me. I'm sure for you as well. Let's spend some time looking at the third and fourth options mainly. Who are you looking at there?
Yeah, well, as you said, obviously with Yo out, there's a potential for 3 and 4 edges to come in. And the other one that we haven't talked about is the unfortunate news around Toby Couchman, who's going to be out for probably a month, I'd say, or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And he obviously, we saw him come off quite early in that game against the Warriors. So, across buys and injuries, we've got that opportunity to just look at a few more options. And one in particular I really like is Keon Kalonga-Matangi. Wayne Bennett's obviously moved him into the middle. Moved into the middle last week from the edge. And although his numbers weren't, crazy outstanding or above and beyond what we've seen from Kalonga-Matangi, I think it just looks to be that little bit more consistency and a little bit more opportunity for him to just, keep with that high base and then potentially add some power and some attack off that. Look, 73 minutes in the middle of the field is a huge effort for a player that usually plays on the edge. And Kalonga-Matangi did that really well last week against, in a game that was a battle up front, obviously with Haas and Carrigan as well. So I think he held his own quite well. And if you go back and watch that game, he did look, he looked in place. He didn't look out of place at all playing in the middle. As we spoke about earlier in the week, though, it's that I guess it's that psychological thing where you see him with an 8 or a 10 on his back rather than a 13. It just doesn't quite look right. But look, if we look at that game last week, 73 minutes, he made 37 tackles, ran over 200 meters, and then the first time this year he hasn't made a tackle break in a game. He still scored 56 points. So I think if he's getting above his average of 50, his season-long average of 50, I think you're looking at a positive there. They're up against the West Tigers as well, who everyone knows they just got absolutely pummeled by the Storm on the weekend, 64 points. So it means that, one, the Tigers can't play finals. They can't win a premiership. And two, I think the newly formed Rabbitohs or the reformed Rabbitohs, I think they might come out and be licking their lips a little bit against a probably vulnerable Tigers, where we saw both Big Nas and Nelson Asafa-Solomona and Josh King, average 65 between them up front against the Tigers. So, yeah, I think Kalonga-Matangi will have a field day.
Yeah, I like that shout, mate. He was pretty popular last season when he was playing predominantly through the middle in that number 13 jersey. So there's no reason why he can't get back to those sorts of numbers. He was pumping out near 80-minute matches. He was scoring tries, albeit that Bunnies team the last couple of years were a little bit different to this one in terms of, their halves and how they're going in terms of the injury front and that sort of thing. But, the more consistent they get, the more, some of those stars string games back to back. Kalonga-Matangi is going to be awesome off the back of that. Michael Kossi has maybe just caught up on the Couchman news. I'm not sure. He's probably looking for a replacement. And Keon is almost a copy and paste version of Couchman, really. He's playing in the middle like Couchman. He's got a really good game in terms of his workload, and he can certainly find some attacking stats as well. Mate, I'll tell you another copy and paste option for this week. It's in from the Raiders team. Matty Nicholson has gone down injured for probably the next maybe 3 months. So big concerns there for the Raiders and poor Matty Nicholson. Hope your recovery goes well, buddy. I'm sure you're watching. But, the Raiders are really lucky, really fortunate to have Zach Hosking, who can come in and take that role. And for me, that's pretty much a copy-paste. Again, Matty Nicholson's got the 4th highest average behind Lucas, Young, and Preston. He's scored 5 tries already in his 9 matches. And that partnership that he's formed with Fogarty on the right-hand side has been awesome. He's finding plenty of attack. He's getting through plenty of base in tackles. Hosking's just going to slide straight into that role. Hopefully he gets the 80 minutes. He played 2 matches on the edge to start the season. He didn't quite see out the 80. I think he got maybe a 68 and a 72, somewhere around there. But there's no reason why he can't play the full 80. He's got plenty of numbers plenty of minutes through the middle on his return from injury. So if Stick wants him to get the job done and play 80, he will. Keeping his guns on the field for as long as possible is obviously the goal for any coach. So if he's not keeping Hosking out there for 80, I'm not too sure what he's doing. But 63 and 48 on the edge in those first 2 matches before moving to the middle. He now gets that Titans matchup, who are pretty soft across the park, leaking 30 points per game. If we lock in Hutto Young on the left and we've got Hosking on the right, there's going to be plenty of points scored, you'd imagine. And you can get amongst both of them. So Matty Nicholson's been great. A lot of people have played him as a pod throughout the year. But now you just need to take him out of your side and replace him with Hosking. And it's as if you're rolling the same guy out. But we've seen what Hosking's done since 2022. He's averaged 60 points when he's played 70 minutes, and that only includes 4 tries. So he's got some try scoring upside, but he's just an absolute workhorse. So for me, he's my start above Keon.
And if we go to the stats and have a look at what the Titans give up to edges on both right and left side, it's both 51 points each side of the field. So we talked about that last week. There's opportunities on both sides of the field for success. And why not hedge your bets and play both sides and hope that Canberra sort of replicate that game or that matchup against the Titans from a few weeks ago. I think like last week that they were playing each other, which, we could talk all day about the draw and the interesting way that the NRL have set up the draw. But, we've got some data to go off in terms of how that last game played out. And then, obviously, as well, that matchup data across there. So, I think Hoskins and Young a great option. And we can just go back to the start of last year and we look at Hoskins. He came out of the gate firing and had an unreal first few weeks before he did pick up that injury, and everyone was scrambling to find a Hosking card. So I think the opportunity to play him, this is probably the best opportunity now that he will have. And like you said, he's probably got that role, hopefully that 80-minute role, sewing up for at least a month or two.
So Jay Boney's asking about Kwalamatangi and KPP. You obviously spoke at length about Kwalamatangi. I think the big difference there, Jay Boney, is Kwalamatangi for his base. He's probably more likely to have a sort of a higher floor. KPP's floor, we saw, he wasn't great last week when he only got through his base. He didn't really have any attacking stats, although we expected him to find some. His floor was obviously a lot lower. So it's just really an argument of, if you're going for base, play Keon. If you want a little bit of an upside through attack and you want to be a little bit risky, KPP might be the way to go there. Matty Pearce obviously likes what we've said about Hosking. Hosking is in for him as well. I thought he might have been a sneaky bit of a pod. He's 14th there on averages for edge forwards. Some coaches might not want to scroll that far down to find his name, but we've already got Hosking mentioned in the chat 3 or 4 times, which is good to see. But he might not be as poddish as I first intended.
Yeah. Oh, well, he might not be our pod of the week then. We might find someone else. Alrighty, let's move on to halves. And again, this week, obviously, the big name that's not there is Nathan Cleary, obviously. And so there are a few other options. I'm set on 2 out of my 3 halves. One of them I'm a little bit concerned about. But the 2 halves that I'm definitely keen on is Jamal Fogarty and then Jaden Campbell as well. Currently, Campbell sitting at an average of 66 GDS points. He's got a high of 87 and a low of 42. He obviously missed a few weeks due to injury. Returned last week for that massive win over the Knights, where we had written off the Titans completely and we played every Knights player imaginable. That obviously was spat back in our face, wasn't it? And he starts this week again against a repeat of that round 7 matchup against the Raiders. And we saw the Titans come out early and get some dominance over the Raiders. And then the Raiders had to work pretty hard to get that game back in round 7. And we saw sort of the opposite last week. The Raiders went out to a massive lead and then were mowed down by the Doggies. So the Raiders like to throw up a bit of everything. And I think the Titans sort of do as well. Look, but the key for me is Jaden Campbell's just an absolute excitement machine. And you just get points from everywhere on the park with him. His base stats are unreal to pump up his floor, averaging 108 run meters, 460 kick meters, and then 20 tackles per game. So he's sitting around that 44, 45 for base. And then he's also kicking goals, which we've talked about. There's a potential 10, 12, 15 points on offer there with the boot. Not to mention then all of that attacking upside that Campbell has to offer. So I think he's a lock for me. Is that sort of where you're leaning as well in terms of Campbell and then Fogarty?
Absolutely. Yeah, those 2 are the first halves picked for me. It is the 3rd spot where I do have a couple of question marks. But look, if we just need to sort my averages, and Campbell is up there ahead of Cleary. Obviously, Cleary had that injury-affected match where he only scored the 4 or 5. But, the numbers tell a bit of a story there. He's averaging 66. He accumulates points all across the park, like you said. And just off the top of your head, mate, do you know how many points he's out averaging Nico Hines by on a per game basis?
Oh, don't do this to me. It's probably about 16.
It's 12, which is pretty big when we're talking, you know, how good Nicho Hynes has been in the last number of years. He hasn't been bad this season. He's still averaging above 50, mid-50s. But here's Jaden Campbell averaging 66, 12 points above Nicho Hynes. Now, is Nicho Hynes a potential start for you this round?
Yeah, and that's where, I've got him there at the moment. Obviously, the risk is the matchup against the Storm, and we've just seen what the Storm did to the Tigers. But we've also seen the downside of the Storm. Go back a few weeks when they played the Dolphins, and they were, put to the shredders, and Izzy Katoa was one of the main instigators there, and that's definitely going to be an option, I think, on people's minds as well. Look, the thing that I'm buoyed by for Nicho Hynes is that, go back a couple of weeks ago to Magic Round, and Melbourne Storm up against the Raiders in the wet. That game was the last game of the round at a Suncorp Stadium. That the field held up pretty well, but there was definitely some patches that didn't look great. And Fogarty was still able to score 50 against the Storm. And look, when we compare those two players, there's not a huge amount of difference, I don't think, in their styles. Maybe Fogarty has a little bit more hands on the ball than what Hynes does at the moment. And I would love Hynes to get a bit more involved and a bit more hands on the ball and looking to run a little bit more. But I think there's an opportunity there for Hynes to still play well and score well against the Storm. But it's definitely a risk. You've got a different player, though, that you're leaning towards for probably some different reasons.
Yeah, it is the old boy in Adam Reynolds, but there's a lot of trepidation around starting him. I do like Sif Kanga's shout of either Moses or Katoa. And we get until Friday, really, to make that decision. We get to sit back on Thursday night, watch some women's footy if we want, and not have to worry about our GDS teams until Friday. But, yeah, look, Adam Reynolds and the Broncos will be really disappointed about last week's effort. They were big favourites against the Bunnies there. The weather obviously wasn't very good, but there's still no reason to be sort of embarrassed that much by a team going that poorly. And I think Adam Reynolds is going to have a big say in that. We do know that Benny Hunt is out for the foreseeable future, and the timing of Ezra Mam's suspension is pretty good, I guess, from the viewpoint of the Broncos, where he can slot straight back into that position where he really excelled in the last couple of seasons in the halves alongside Reynolds. Reynolds' numbers alongside Ezra Mam are actually a lot sort of less than they are, probably by 8 or 12 points than they are with, a second string or a backup half, when he sort of has to run the entire side by himself and demands a lot more ball. So in the past with Mam, he doesn't need as many touches. But look, we've seen someone as good or even better than Ezra Mam on that left for the Bronx in Ben Hunt, but Adam Reynolds has still had a fantastic season so far. He's still averaging just under 60 points, averaging 58. And that's with someone just as dominant as he is on the left-hand side. And a lot of points the Broncos have scored have gone down the left. So it's not as though Reynolds is going to be a completely different player with Ezra Mam there. I think it might even help Adam Reynolds a little bit. Ezra's probably just going to be told to run and do his thing. He probably won't kick the footy a lot. Adam Reynolds' kicking numbers might go up a little bit. He might even, command a bit more ball since it's Ezra's first game back. We know that the Broncos can score points, and every time they're scoring points, Reynolds typically might have his fingerprints over it, but at least he'll have the kicking tee, and he can go up in threes. So, look, the matchup with the Dragons on the statistical side of things isn't fantastic for right halves. They're a quality side. They're due a bounce back. They're going to score points, and Reynolds, provided he, stays on the field for the full 80 minutes, he'll be amongst that for sure.
Yeah. And as you said, a couple of other players on screen there. Mitchell Moses, definitely a potential. We've got the Eels up against the Knights, and the Knights average 46 to both sides of the field in terms of halves. I'm just a little bit burnt by Mitchell Moses after last week, after I played him again, and he didn't really produce like I hoped. So I'm a little bit burnt by that. Metcalf is obviously another name on everyone's lips at the moment. He's in some unreal form. He comes up against the Dolphins, who only allow 34 to left halves. And, obviously these are stats, and we look at the data and look at, all of the previous games, etc. And Metcalf might go out and have a big game, but I'm just a little bit concerned about the Dolphins restricting that left side, and then potentially someone like Chanel probably taking over a little bit and maybe having a bit more creativity there. The other player there's two other players that I don't mind, and one of them, as Sif Kanga said, is Izzy Katoa. And we look at Izzy Katoa, he's averaging 54 this season across each of his games. And he's had some unreal games. He's got a couple of 70s in there. He's got a 65. He's got a couple of 50s and then a low of 40 or 39, sorry. So I think there's some definite upside to him. Again, the concern is that they come up against the Warriors, who only allow 33 to left side halves as well. So the match data is probably not there for me. The one match data or the one stat that is there, but I'm just scared to play him, is Cherry Evans. And DCE comes up against the Cowboys, who allow a massive 76 points to right half.
Wow. Okay. You got me listening. Not sure if my connection has dropped out or if I've lost Dill. Looks like Dill may have dropped out. He was just about to start talking about
I'm back.
Daly Cherry Evans.
I'm back.
His all right, I was getting excited as well. I was listening and then you left and I'm like, you've left me on this cliffhanger. 76 points.
Yep, DCE up against the Cowboys. The Cowboys allow 76 to right halves. I'm just a little bit scared about playing DCE. The Manly side haven't looked great the last couple of weeks. Obviously, they started quite well. And in terms of DCE, last week he scored 35 points. We've seen some really poor games from him where he just goes missing. So I'm a little bit nervous about that. So I've got a bit of work ahead of me over the next couple of days. Do I stick with Hines? Do I pivot off Hines and play someone like Reynolds? Or do I potentially go to a DCE or even a Jerome Hughes? Jerome's got a decent matchup against the Sharks. So there's plenty of options there. And I guess there's so many pivots. And yeah, I'm just a little bit nervous about that third half at the moment. And nothing is jumping out at me. So I'm going to stick with my man Hines because I'm in love. And hopefully he repays that love in a big way this week.
The DCE shout is really interesting because we've seen a couple of changes happening at the Cowboys. Obviously, they've moved Jake Clifford on and they've got a new halves pairing. Presume Purdue will stay on the left and play 5'8" on the left and Dearden might be the one to move over to the right. I can't imagine, you'd throw the young Purdue in on his non-favoured side on the right-hand side. I guess we don't truly know because Dearden has been so dominant on the left. But I feel as though Purdue will be playing on the left, Dearden on the right, which means DCE, Halmole, Garrick and, Turbo sweeping right up against Purdue, who's now defending one or two men in, having to make more tackles. He's obviously been unbelievable there in playing center for the Cowboys, but he's got to do a lot more tackling now. And he won't have tackled blokes like Haumole Olakuatu recently at all that many times. So, yeah, there might be a little sniff there for a couple of short balls from Cherry Evans. And, yeah, that 76 with Haumole on his outside up against Purdue. Gee, that's tempting. Thank God we've got an extra 24 hours to mull over our sides because that's now got me thinking about Reynolds.
I'd probably be more likely to go with him if Robert Derby was also lining up over on that side in defence. After last week, what did he make about 6 errors? He obviously made up with it with a try. But, yeah, if he was on that side, I think I'd be more likely to go that way. Don't know what that makeup of the squad's going to be. I might need someone at the ground to let me know what they're looking like in the warm-up.
Sounds good, mate. Centers. That man, Jackson Purdue, is on our board. Yeah. He's obviously playing out of position there. He's been great. Like, he's been playable in some weeks if some people have been game enough to risk him. But now he gets closer to the footy. And we talk about Fletcher Sharp being an option playing as a winger in game day squad, but obviously with the 6 on his back for the Knights. Purdue's not much different now, being able to be played in the centers, but playing with the number 6 on his back, getting the ball in his hands a little bit more in that Cowboys team that are obviously pretty creative. They've been playing some really good footy of late. I don't know if it's going to excel his game. I feel like maybe the first couple of weeks, it might be a bit of a feeling out period for him, and he might be just getting used to the position. He's obviously played that position. It is his main position playing through the juniors, but playing the juniors and then compare that to NRL is quite different, obviously. So it might just take him the game or two. Who knows? He might, have an absolute freak performance, and we're even talking about him as a potential, origin bolter over the coming years, or if there's a bit of an injury crisis. But he's just one guy to keep an eye on. Don't be fooled by the no team logo next to his name. You can play him as a center. He will have the 6 on his back. So just like Fletcher Sharp, out of position players with positive changes in game day squad are gold. I can't do it this round. We've obviously got some really good centre options, and we have all season. But look, over the origin period, when we have blokes backing up or plenty of teams on the bye, just keep an eye on Purdue. I think he might come into contention pretty shortly. But for me, it's probably Herbie Farnworth that we don't need to talk too much about. He's that model of consistency. He's just about fixture proof. He scores plenty of tries. He tackle breaks. He offloads. He's an absolute weapon. He's an absolute workhorse. It's probably just that second centre. You want to tell us who you're going and why?
Yeah. I mean, every one of those options are almost viable. Val Holmes up against the Broncos, who allow 42 to left centres. Brimson potentially as well. Again, you can play him out of position up against the Raiders. They allow 40 points to right halves. It's probably Garrick and the Cowboys. We talked about that new pairing potentially, and and the halves there. Garrick up against the Cowboys right centers. They're only allowing 30 points as well. So there's obviously a change of personnel. That might change, but, that's not great reading. And the other one that, again, I'm not playing this week because he burnt me, is Selwyn Cobbo. He comes up against the Dragons, who allow 57 points to fullbacks, which has them ranked 4th to that position. But it was a completely different Cobbo last week than it was 2 weeks ago at Magic Round. He did absolutely everything and was in everything at Magic Round. And last week I don't know, and I don't want to say it, but he just didn't seem like he wanted to be there, or I don't know, he just wasn't quite switched on. I'm not quite sure, but he just didn't produce like we thought he would. So for me, I'm just going to stick with the highest averaging centre outside of Herbie Farnworth and go with KL Iro. Again, on paper, it looks like a pretty tough matchup up against the Storm. However, if we go outside of last game up against the Tigers, the Storm have allowed 60, 25, and then 80 to the left centres the previous 3 weeks. So there's definitely an opportunity there for KL Iro to go well again. And we just look at his return from injury over the last couple of games. He's averaged 1 try, 1 line break, 17 tackles, 4.5 tackle breaks, and 135 run meters. So, if he can do that against the Storm, then he might be in that sort of area as well with Farnworth, who we consider as matchup proof. I think KL might be close to that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It was Herbie Farnworth against the Storm. He had that massive game when the Finns sort of upset the Storm there at Suncorp, and a lot of people were sort of thinking, Farnworth, great player, Storm, really good defensive matchup, really good defensive side. But it was that side of the field that just went nuts. And Iro's a really similar player. He's that really strong tackle breaking player that isn't afraid to offload. He's in a good attacking team. What Storm still have Silfar-Longo on the right wing. They obviously weren't really tested a lot in defence last week against the poor Tigers, who are, defending all game and not really able to attack. So, it's definitely a different setup here. There might be a little bit of an ambush from the Sharkies. The Storm are obviously riding high and probably, had a fairly cruisy week at training after such a big win. So, I don't mind a couple of Sharkies options, and Iro, has a pretty favourable matchup if we're just looking at statistics. Again, it's really tough with they're up against the Storm. The Storm have just won 64-0. No one on the Tigers scored any points of note, so why are you going to plug in a player playing the Storm? Mate, I like it. I probably might find myself there as well, but the other player I'm considering isn't even on that graphic there as the 6 options that we've gone with this week. I'm starting to come around to Stephen Crichton. He's never really struck me as, a super fantasy relevant player. Obviously a great footballer in real life. A lot have him penned as, the best defensive center in the game. He's got representative footy written all over him. But look, he's humming along really nicely in a Bulldog side that is traveling really well as well. He's had some really big back-to-back scores over the last couple of rounds. He's linking up with Carraz on that right side of the field really, really well. And they're both causing opposition defences a lot of trouble. It looks like he's retaining the kicking duties above Matty Burton. And that was something that we weren't sure about when Burton returned. But the Dogs are scoring plenty of points. And we'd be talking about Burton a lot more if he had the kicking tee, because that's about 12 to 18 points, most weeks for the Bulldogs kicker. And if Stephen Crichton's putting that on top of his average in a team that's scoring a lot more points with a tremendous partnership there with Carraz on the right, I'm liking a lot of what Stephen Crichton has been showing. The matchup here against the Roosters is okay. They're only averaging about 40. They're only allowing about 40 or just shy to right side centers. But look, the Dogs with Crichton, with Carraz on the outside there are probably, above standard or above average in terms of, the right side centers and winger combinations that have come up against the Roosters. So look, I don't mind that. And you wouldn't have had many right side centers apart from probably Garrick kicking goals against the against the Roosters either. So for me, Stephen Crichton looms as a bit of a cheeky pod, who I think might score well this week.
Yeah, as soon as we say his name, he's no longer a pod, obviously. But I think the stats are pretty telling. And as you said, last 2 games, a couple of massive games, averaging 71 in the last 2. Before that, his first 7 games, he was averaging 34. So he's pretty much doubled his average in those 2 games. And look, maybe it's a coincidence, maybe not. But we've obviously got Origin coming up, and maybe he's putting in that performance to say, hey, I'm still here. There's plenty of other buzz around a few other players, but I'm still here, and I'm still going to be the best centre that you need to pick, probably alongside Bradman Best potentially as well. I do like that option. Obviously, I'm a little bit concerned about those first 7 games. His first game, he scored 11 points against the Dragons, and then also against the Knights, he scored about 19. So, just a little bit concerned about that output and whether that 71 average over the last 2 weeks is a true reflection of his average, or whether there was extenuating circumstances. So I'll probably give him another week, see how he goes. Obviously, that means that come round 12, he will be on probably that major buy or close to that major buy, but it will just be an opportunity to have a think about whether I play someone like Stephen Crichton moving forward. But I like it. And look, we've done enough. We've changed Sif Kanga's mind. He was going to play Garrick as his third centre, but he's changed his mind and going back to 3 fullbacks, which I think probably is the smarter option. But when we get to fullbacks again, there's a few options there, and I don't know if I'm fully set on my fullback options either. So maybe you will switch back soon, Sif Kanga. But let's jump into the wingers now. And again, a bit happening in the wing position. I think majority of us are going to stick with the tried and true method of Fletcher Sharp and Jacob Kiraz, but we've got people like Xavier Coates, Josh Adokar, and Phil Sammy playing some really good footy. And then we've got that man, Zach Lomax, who we rate highly. He's returning from injury. It's any of those sort of on your mind in terms of looking at playing them in other squads, or are you just going to stick with that combination of Fletcher Sharp and Jacob Kiraz?
Yeah, look, some people might not have a Fletcher Sharp diamond or a platinum or a gold that they want to plug in, some of those high competitions. Some people might not have got a Fletcher Sharp bronze yet. So I think Kiraz will be played pretty heavily across the competition. Him and Sharp are both averaging 59, 8 points clear of the next best winger. And they're both injured, Tuapoloto and Marju. They're 11 points clear of Zach Lomax as well. But for those that don't have that Sharp card or maybe not a Kiraz or do want to pod up, Lomax could be a sneaky pod this week. He probably has that one match now to put his hand up for an Origin spot. Whether he's coming in underdone just so he can, show Loz what he can do with probably one match before Origin teams are announced, I'm not sure. But because Kiraz and Sharp are going along so well and just being so clear of anyone else in the position, probably not needing to jump off either of those two this round. In saying that, I wouldn't be surprised if Lomax is amongst one of the top, 2 or 3 scoring wingers for the week and has a really good week. But when Sharp and Kiraz are pumping out those numbers back to back, it's pretty simple just to plug and play them. If you didn't have one of those cards, I'd be looking at Lomax. Just because he should be back kicking. He's probably going to rip in for a big Origin. What do you call it? He's going to put his hand up for Origin and do a bit of a rehearsal. He'll do an Origin rehearsal this round and just remind everyone, all the selectors, what he can do on the wing there. To'o looked a bit out of sorts last week. Still looks a little bit underdone with that injury. So the Blues outside back's probably far from being decided on, and Lomax probably has a really good crack here to show what he can do. So he'd be my big pod. Storm have been flying. Coates has been great, but doesn't really strike me as that fantasy player, and he can get some really low scores as well. So I've talked for way too long. It's Sharp and Kiraz for me with Lomax as a potential pod.
Yeah, I think you're really relying on Coates to get over the line a couple of times if you do play him. Lomax for me, the only question mark I have is he going to come back and definitely kick goals? We obviously saw Mitch Moses come back from injury. He was kicking while was out, and then Mitch Moses didn't get the kicking tee. Sean Russell kept that. Do they just give someone like Lomax another week to sort of ease in and not give him those duties straight away? I don't know. Obviously, if he is kicking, then that's probably just a benefit for anyone that wants to play Lomax. Look, I know it's not an Origin-specific pod. We are talking about, players for GDS, but is someone like Jacob Carraz really going to take that spot away from someone like Lomax or To'o? Carraz is playing some unreal footy, and I could see him making that side easily.
Yeah, there's a chance that they run Turbo on a wing as well.
Yeah. I'm concerned in terms of GDS then losing some of our, some of the best players that we've got in terms of Carraz, etc. And then, being stuck with a couple of options that we don't really like. So fingers crossed they just stick with their tried and true method of playing fullbacks in every position in the back line and then keeping all of the good players for us. Matty P has put up I believe that might be Matty Pierce. He's asking Harry Hayes playing on an edge worth a look since he's available at the wing position for GDS. It's not really something I have thought about or considered or looked at, but I like in a lot of my other fantasy competitions having an edge player that's available to play in that sort of wing position or in the center position. So it's definitely something I would look at. Unfortunately, I don't have any stats on me right now that would suggest I would play him. But if you are looking outside of that, potentially that might be an option. I guess the only thing that I would consider is that if you've got a Jacob Carraz or a Fletcher Sharp, I think you're silly not to play them.
Yeah, Hayes is really impressed in sort of limited minutes off the bench for the Dogs, and he might even get that 80 minutes on the edge there, if not maybe 60. So if you're looking for someone just to sort of bank you that probably 40 floor is a bit of a flaw there, playing on the edge for 60 or 70 minutes. He's been shown that he can pump through plenty of work playing through the middle and on an edge already in a limited capacity. But playing a good team like the Dogs, he's going to get through his work. It's not the worst shout. Over the Origin period, when we've got half the comp on buys and the Origin players out, that could be a great time to slot a Harry Hayes in, a winger playing on the in the actual edge in real life footy. It's a great way to sort of lock in that 40 or 50 when you're not too sure about plugging a winger like your man Alex Johnson, who could score 88 or 8. Harry Hayes could get that 40 to 50. But
That's
not
right.
this week. Certainly maybe in those shortened or condensed weeks across the Origin period.
And 40 is probably a good shout for someone like Harry Hayes. Just having a quick look at the stats, the Roosters allow an average of 40 points to edge forwards on the right side. So that probably seems about right then for Harry Hayes. So like you said, if you're happy to just lock and load your 40, similar to maybe your hooker position, something like that, chuck him in and just know that you can make some scores elsewhere or make some moves up the leaderboard elsewhere. And one of those positions I think definitely will be the fullback position, and I think it's no secret that every coach is going to play Pappenhausen after his unreal game against the Tigers. 4 tries, 10 goals, 2 line breaks, 7 tackle breaks, 1 offload, 211 metres gained, 105 kicking metres, plus on top of all of that, he made 1 tackle. So he just had to get his 1 mandatory tackle in. And I think he ended up scoring about 128 GDS points. So he had an unreal game. You're silly not to go back to him. I think he's averaging 1.3 tries per game. There's only 1 game that he hasn't scored a try in so far this season. And he's had 2, 3, 4 elsewhere. So I think Pappenhausen is a clear lock for me. And the other one that's a clear lock for me is probably James Tedesco. Obviously, he does come up against the top team in the Doggies, and they're only limiting fullbacks to an average of 30 GDS points, which does look scary on paper. But look, Teddy's on a 5-game average of 65, and he's doing everything he can to push for that potential Origin rebirth. So I think Tedesco will come out here and probably try and stamp his name all over this game. The Roosters are up and down this season, but I just look at their team on paper, and on paper they look like a really good side, and I feel like if they put it all together, they could beat the Bulldogs, and I think James Tedesco is going to have a big part of that. Is that sort of where you're thinking with those two? And then we're looking at a few variants in terms of our third option.
Oh, not at the moment. Definitely Pappy. Look, even though before his 126-point game, he still only had back-to-back sort of mid-40s. He wasn't really screaming a must play. And I do know a few GDS coaches had their pants pulled down not playing him against the Tigers and missing out on that huge score. But yeah, you can't admit a bloke that's just coming off a big 126-point game. Don't expect it again if he goes back to his sort of 47s like we've seen in a couple of matches. I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, with someone who's demonstrated that ceiling already, it'd be silly to leave him out. I'm going to look past James Tedesco at the moment, mostly just because of that Dogs matchup and trying to take advantage of maybe some other matchups that on paper might look a little bit better, and also in the statistical category. Teddy has obviously been super impressive. He's got the second highest average for fullbacks, and he's only scored 2 tries. Pappy scored 12 tries, and he's only out averaging Teddy by the 1 solitary point. He's also kicking goals, so 12 tries, 36 goals against Teddy's 2 tries, 0 goals. That is just absolutely incredible. Give Teddy 12 tries and 36 goals. Actually, I might do the maths off air a little bit later on and see what he might be averaging. That would be, outrageous. But yeah, it's just that matchup for me. Look, he'll probably find his way into half of my squads, maybe all 4 of them come Friday. But I'm going to look to take advantage of maybe a Drinkwater, a Hammer, or a Latrell matchup. You might even find a CNK sneak into one of my squads as well. It seems like a week where the fullback position is really open, and that's what makes GDS really exciting, that we're not just locking in the same 3 plays every single week. I think Pappy will be pretty popular, but like you mentioned, Teddy, I've got Latrell, Hammer, Drinky, Turbo, and CNK as options as well. I might even just hedge my bets, put them all across different squads and just sit back and hope. But if I was to lock my 3 plays in now, I'm going Drinky, I'm going Pappy, and I'm going Latrell.
Yeah, I love the Latrell call, and I'm just a little bit nervous. He obviously, had a big game against the Broncos. The concern for me was the lack of running. I know he had 2 line breaks and a couple of offloads there, but he seemed to have a couple of runs early and then sort of just let the everyone else do the work. I think maybe he shouldn't have run at Payne Haas on his first run, because I think he got smacked around and wasn't really keen. But obviously we saw what he can do as a footy player in general in terms of his ability to make that try-saving tackle, then also kick a 50-meter field goal. But then we also probably saw some people would have loved it and some people would have hated the try that he scored, where he took a knee and was trying to waste time and then ducked over for the try. And, that obviously skews his points and his average a little bit as well. So on one side of me, I don't necessarily like that from Latrell. We see it quite a bit. It doesn't really matter in terms of fantasy. I think I just should try and get over my distaste for some of the things that Latrell does and just play him over someone like Teddy or Ponga this week. And that's probably my other concern is, again, I'm going back to Ponga this week. And look, I said the Knights could be back to their best, and they definitely weren't. They were pretty horrible in that game. Outside of that, though, Lucas and Sharp scored quite well. It was just Ponga that was the main man that suffered with only 31 points. So do I go back to Ponga in a matchup against the Eels that probably looks all right on paper? The Eels allowing almost 50 GDS points to fullbacks, and of the teams playing, that has them ranked 4th. But the other player that I really love, and you mentioned his name, and that's CNK. Last week, he was my pod of the week. And like I said, he scored 70-odd points and top scored for that game up against the Dolphins in what should be a massive matchup. Saturday afternoon, about 3 o'clock, Suncorp Stadium, which I think is the spiritual home of the Warriors. I think they should have probably more supporters there than the Dolphins. So I think that'll be a big matchup for the Warriors. And the Dolphins allow 60 GDS points to CNK. The concern I have is that, outside of CNK's 3 big scores above 60, he's averaging 25 with, a couple of games below 30 or quite a few games below 30. So I don't know which CNK we're going to get. Hopefully we get the good one and he scores quite well.
I know CNK has a brand new shiny diamond CNK. Sifkang, any chance of rolling him out this week? I know you're pretty keen on, it looks like Pap, Hammer, Teddy, or Drinkwater. Certainly not Dreamwater after he let us down against Penrith. He still scored that 48, and he's been super consistent. Like he does in the past, he hasn't really been that consistent player. He's had some really low, low 20 sorts of scores and some big 60, 70, 80 scores. But he's been super consistent this year. I think his lowest score has been in the mid-40s. He hasn't really scored anything below that. And he's just getting it done across all of the statistical categories. When the Cowboys are scoring points, he's involved, and he's obviously kicking goals and kicking them quite well this year as well. So, yeah, Dreamwater, maybe not this week. We can run out Drinkwater. We probably won't expect the big 60 or 70, but he's been super consistent. If you're finding it really difficult picking a fullback, he might be one that you look towards. But those numbers for CNK, the numbers for Teddy are jumping off the page as well. So I think I've got a bit of thinking to do between now and Friday night. We just want to give you the numbers. We want to give you our thoughts, and we obviously make some changes on the run as well. But look, we got 6 really handy names up there on the screen plus CNK.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think if you run one of them, you're going to be too far behind the pack if they don't go as well. They're all super handy players. They've got a lot of quality around them, and they've been doing it for a number of seasons as well. So you don't really lose GDS by picking the wrong fullback. But look, getting the 3 fullbacks right certainly goes a long way to getting up there on the leaderboard. So that probably doesn't help too much. So Dill, just want to clarify who your 3 are going to be this round?
Yeah. So at the moment, I'm sticking with Teddy, Pappy,
Yep.
and then looking at playing Ponga as well. Ponga's probably the one that I will potentially look to pivot into maybe Mitchell. The scary thing looking at all of those names there is there's only one Queenslander. They're all New South Welshmen. And they could all find their way into an Origin side. So if you do have some of their players in silver or gold, make sure you hold on to those, because the Queensland versus New South Wales competition will be coming up soon. There's a separate GDS competition for that. You will see a separate competition on the GDS page, and there'll be some more information. I think maybe some information dropped today as well around prizes and information there. So keep an eye on that. Origin players and that Queensland versus New South Wales matchup will be massive. So yeah, keep an eye on those teams and keep an eye on those players as well.
And we'll talk a bit more about that over the coming weeks as well. Here's a quick look at our round 11 starter and GDS Cup squads. This is a summary of all the players that we've spoken about. You can see Dill's differences highlighted there in gold. Obviously, there might be a few changes between now and Friday, but that's the way we're looking. So Brian's Broncos, if you are watching, you've got a bit of an idea about who Dill is going to run out, and you might be able to start planning who your couple of pods might be to get the job over him. Really, it only takes the one pod, doesn't it? And if you can get in front early with one pod, and not knowing what your opponent's done, because you can't see live scores unless they're on the leaderboard, you still don't know how many they've played. It could be pretty interesting, not only between you two, but between the 2 big boys in the other side of the semi-final as well. I'm sure you're pretty happy to have avoided both of those. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. Look, just on the teams there, just quickly, I've just got some news that Tyrrell May, he's not going to play this week. So Brian, you might just want to just take him out of your side and maybe run with maybe Aden Fanua-Blake or something like that.
For anyone listening or watching, I think that's just a bit of gamesmanship. Yeah, I would do my due diligence and do my own research, and don't go to your competition screen and get rid of May just yet. Wouldn't it be funny though if we get a Friday night tweet or something saying May in doubt? No, we're not gonna wish that negative karma on anyone. But Brian's Broncos probably shaking in his boots.
And as always, we do our best to try and post teams when they are named an hour before the game kicks off on Discord, so that you can make any last minute changes that you need to. And a reminder there as well, the lockout for each game is a couple minutes before the game kicks off. So you want to get that done as soon as possible. Don't put that aside and think, I'll get to that a few minutes before the game. You want to try and do that as soon as, or as close to that hour before when the games when the teams are announced. So yeah, keep an eye on Discord. If you're not there, make sure you head along to the Game Day Squad Discord, because there's heaps of goodies there, as well as obviously those live updates.
All right, Bro Down Showdown. Dill, I think your record in Bro Down Showdown resembled the 2025 Penrith Panthers. And maybe what could it be? The 2006 Rabbitohs? I don't think they won many games at all that season. But look, you've got 2 or 3 wins on the trot. Well done. There's a loss for me. So, as you know, Dill and I go head to head. We randomly spin a wheel 3 times. whatever position that wheel lands on. We pick one player to go head-to-head against the opponent, and we can either win 2-1 or 3-0, and the loser is required to open up a pack live on air and give one of those cards or two of those cards out to a lucky viewer. So, Dill, do you want to spin the wheel first?
Yes,
and then we'll look at who is going to get one of the cards from the pack that I will open.
Alrighty, and as Stu said, really easy to get involved. Just make sure you comment who you think is going to win. So the people that commented for me to win this week, we've got Lams, Tommy H, Maddie P, Sif Kanger again, and then Cozzy Posse is in it as well. So let's spin the wheel and see who might win an awesome card or two. And there we go. Cozzy's Posse. Well done, mates. Congrats. So let's jump back across and let's see if we can get cards. Let's see if we can get the cards up on screen.
How are we looking?
Unreal. We're looking good. Let's go.
All right. So Dill, you won 2-1. What are we doing? What card is going to go to the viewers?
Let's go the middle card for Cozzy's Posse. The middle card here. Remember, this is a 3-player rare. We're back to the 3-player rare.
Oh, we've got a platinum for Cozzy's Posse. We've got Matty Arthur.
Probably not someone you want to play week to week or at all. So let's go the card to the right, and we'll give Cozzy this one. It's just our luck. All right, this one's got to be good. We've got to go this one. Tanner Boyd, Matt Arthur, and Connolly Levy. No.
Look, I think a few people that missed out on the wheel spin won't be too disappointed that their name wasn't drawn. Yeah. That's the luck of the draw, I guess. We'll sort out something for Cozzy as I'm sure. You know, Steve Kanger got himself a C&K diamond last week. So yeah, Cozzy's Posse, hit us up if you want one of those cards. Let us know, but we'll sort you out. Hit me up during the in the GDS Discord or on our Instagram page. That's at FantasyBros AU. And we'll sort out something for you that you can probably use this week, and yeah, improve that squad. Sorry about the cards. That's the luck of the draw. Let's hope next week we have a bit more luck, and the positions that we'll be picking from are hooker, middle, and center. And you can see on screen there, Dill's gone for Wade Egan at hooker against Maurice Robson. We've got the two big boys lining up in the middle against each other once again. Payne Haas against Terrell May. And Kale Iro against the Storm versus my Herbie Farnworth. If you think that I will get back in the winner's circle, comment Stu on our YouTube channel once this video goes live. So go to the Fantasy Bros AU on YouTube and comment Stu in there. If you think Dill will continue his run of form with Egan Haas and Kale Iro, comment Dill in that video and make sure you give the channel a follow as well. I think we're pushing close to 100 subscribers. Dill, wouldn't that be exciting to see those 2 digits tick over to 3? Can we do it? Everyone currently watching us live, jump over to our YouTube channel right now, click that subscribe button, and we probably have a couple of nice giveaways when we see those triple digits. What do you reckon?
Just on that, we're getting close to our 50th show across all GDS competitions. So that's both the Origin, the Queensland versus New South Wales shows that we've done, the cricket shows that we've done, and then obviously the NRL this season. So it'd be awesome to get us to 100 subscribers on our 50th show, and we could do a pretty big giveaway. That would be unreal. Thank you to those people that are also commenting already. I'm making sure I'm taking note of all of those comments. So thank you for that. And just quickly, Cozzy has commented and he's called it the Cozzy's curse. That seems to be the case. Most weeks he wins a card and it's not that great. But then Sif Kanger has jumped in and said that he wouldn't mind going with a Tanner Boyd. He could be valuable if there is an injury to one of those Warriors halves. And I know that they have big raps on Tanner Boyd and what he's doing off the field. So, yeah, you might be right. That might be a decent option there as well.
Fair call. Yeah, we've got a couple of deals being mentioned already, but Jay Boney and Nathan Hartwell.
There we go.
They're both getting back on the stew train this week and thinking I can get back in the winner's square. So thanks for commenting already, guys. Dill's got that recorded. Everyone else, make sure you comment Dill or my name on that YouTube page once you have subscribed to us. All righty, Dill, what a show. That's it for round 11. Good luck, everyone. Thanks for joining in and contributing once again. Make sure you wish Dill a final good luck there in the GDS Cup. He's got a lot of thinking to do between now and Friday to get that team perfect in his clash there with Brian's Broncos. We'll report back to you next Wednesday at 7 p.m. That's 21st of May, and keep you updated to whether or not Dill's made it into that final. Whether he has or not, as always, we'll run through our teams for round 12. Yeah. And we'll probably have a bit of Origin chat as well and see some of the GDS fallout from those players selected. Thanks for joining us once again. Make sure you go over to our Instagram page, our TikTok, and our YouTube channel. Follow us at FantasyBros AU. Leave a comment, leave a like. Good luck this round, everyone. Thanks for joining us. See you, Dill.
Thanks, you. Thanks, viewers. Thanks, listeners. Good luck with everyone for round 11.